Georgia had their first test of the season. They passed it. Final score, Georgia 24, South Carolina 14. There was an email sent out, I believe at least, I can't prove this, I believe there was an email sent out to a lot of the top teams across the college football landscape, and they told them, hey, listen, play as ugly a game as possible, right? Make it a high entertainment value kind of style of game, but find a way to win the football game. And Georgia said, no problem, we can do that for you. And they did just that. Again, final score 24-14, but Georgia was actually down in this football game at half. So, what do we take away from this game? What do we take away from Georgia passing this test? We'll talk about it here. But Georgia Bulldog fans, had a lot of y'all join the party recently and be subscribed to the channel. If you have not yet, we welcome you with open arms. We're glad to have you here. It's college football. And only college football here. I promise you we will talk a lot about your Dogs, so make sure you're locked in with us. Also, follow me on Instagram and on Twitter, both at JD Pickell, all right? I want to hear from y'all. What do you think about yesterday's game? How do we feel about going for a three-peat? Let me know, all right? Actually, we'll reference one of your DMs actually in this video, so very important to be following there. No shortage of things that you would like to see different from this game. Understand that for Georgia, fall camp essentially ended yesterday when you played South Carolina. No disrespect to Ball State and UT Martin, but that was kind of the reality. Like, you hadn't played anybody with a competitive roster. And so for Carson Beck, this is his first time to really play another team that had a factor in which they could have beat you, right? I mean, like, in reality, there was a couple of scenarios there where if Georgia doesn't end up doing what Georgia did, this game goes a couple different ways. Even so, 27 for 35, 269, like, it's hard to be mad at that stat line. To the exact same token, though, you'd like to see him maybe loosen the arm up a little bit, maybe take a little bit more caffeine pregame and have him throw the ball downfield, have him kind of take some of those shots in one-on-one, maybe test a couple of those tight windows. Even so, hard to be mad at that stat line, but I think going forward for Carson Beck, for Georgia, you will need to see them have more of a vertical presence in this offense for them to operate at max capacity. That's my own opinion. Again, it's week 3. We'll talk about that more in a second here, but that's how I feel about Carson Beck. Very, very difficult to be upset with 27 of 35. Now, defensively, only allowed 14 points, but you allowed 256 through the air. Spencer Rattler was, for the most part, outside of a couple of poor decisions late in that game, was good Spencer Rattler. He gave you a good look for what you can expect from other SEC quarterbacks and other quarterbacks going to play across the rest of the games you have in front of you. Like, Spencer Rattler, as much flack as he gets, dude's a talented quarterback, and he did not get much help from anyone else on South Carolina's roster yesterday overall. But I mean, even so, like, I was really impressed with him. And so for Georgia, you're like, man, 256 through the air feels like too much. Feels like if there's another offense that has more weapons and that has more of a balanced attack running the football, that's where I would have liked to see more help for Spencer Rattler yesterday. Maybe this thing turns out a little bit differently. So you want to tighten that up. But again, 14 points. Hard to be mad at it, right? Hard to be upset with allowing 14 points against an SEC opponent. Missed 2 field goals. You missed 2 field goals, both makeable field goals. You'll clean it up, you'll correct it, but there's a lot to coach is what I'm trying to say from right now. There's a lot from Georgia that you can point at and say, don't like that. Don't know if that's championship level football. And I got a question from one of y'all on my Instagram, and we do this thing every Friday, so it's worth the follow if you want to contribute to this conversation and kind of have a back and forth. We don't do it on YouTube. Follow me at JD Pickell over there. And we do it on Fridays where it's just a question and answer. You hit me with a question, I respond back via video and answer it for the entirety of my following and whoever's tuned in. So the question was, do you think that we see Georgia get exposed by South Carolina tomorrow? Again, this is on Friday going into Saturday. And my answer was, even if the box score indicates that Georgia didn't play a perfect game, even if we see some things where it's like, it doesn't look like a team that's going for a 3rd national title in a row, I don't think there's a world where Georgia gets exposed because it's only week 3. The team that we saw in Athens yesterday is not the same team that we're going to see in November when they play Ole Miss and when they play Tennessee. Why? Because that's how Kirby Smart operates. He continues to adjust. His team gets better throughout the course of a year. We saw this from them last year. We saw them kind of play with their food against Kent State and say, man, that margin of victory left something to be desired. That box score at a certain point in time during the game was a little bit too close for comfort. Game against Missouri, had to come back on the road and find a way to get it done there. And you're like, Missouri? Really? That's who we're going back and forth with? And then wouldn't you know, when it comes time for November, when it comes time for the college football playoff, everyone's like, man, I don't want to play Georgia. They're playing their best ball right now. I think that's the same thing we're going to see from this team throughout the course of the year. So the things you saw yesterday, essentially it was game one for Georgia. Like, no disrespect to who they've played so far. That was Georgia's first real game, first real gauge for what they're going to be the rest of the season. That's their starting point. And even so, even when they got down, even when they were down at half, what did we see? We saw them, one, have more depth and talent than South Carolina. No disrespect to South Carolina. That's just the way that Kirby Smart has stocked the cupboard in Athens, Georgia, and that wore on South Carolina throughout the course of the game. Hey, big bodies, big talented dudes, over the course of 4 quarters, going to wear you down. Even with Georgia being banged up, they were able to wear them down, and eventually it felt like the pipes sort of burst for South Carolina against that Georgia talent. The other part, the DNA traits of Georgia. I mean, that you talk to a Georgia football player and ask them, you know, why is Georgia so good? They talk about falling back on their traits. We talked to Darnell Washington last year at the national title game during media day, and that was his exact answer. We fall back on our traits when it's go time. And that was Georgia yesterday. Down 14-3 at the half. Kirby Smart walks into that halftime interview cool as a cucumber. No panic, no sense of worry, no anxiety. He just kind of matter of fact talked through what was going on, talked about what they had to do. Georgia adjusted, went out, executed, did it, won the football game. That's why we're having the conversation we're having today. That's why you're viewing the lens of the game film. That's why you're viewing that game film the way that you are today, through the lens of a win rather than a loss. There's no panic. Georgia has the best internal temperature that stays consistent week into week, and they were able to execute at the level they did yesterday, and that's why Georgia's Georgia. So those factors allowed them to beat South Carolina yesterday, even with the score being what it was at halftime. And I think this is a good thing overall for Georgia, because you need resistance to get strong for the rest of the way. Like this game, this test for them against South Carolina being down at the half, that's going to help them when they go to Auburn, when they play Kentucky, when they play Florida in Jacksonville. It won't be the first time that Georgia's had to kind of muster up some strength and go after somebody. This is great for Georgia to have been in chase mode yesterday. It's going to help them the rest of the way, because now it's familiar territory. Now, when you get into that game against Auburn and they get up on you 7-0, there's no, oh my gosh, what is going on? It's, okay, we've been here before. Settle in. Remember South Carolina? Yeah, you do? Okay, great. Well, now let's go do our thing. This is a good thing for Georgia overall. You pass the test, you're stronger for it. That simple. Now, the question mark, or the thing I guess that would be a potential question mark for Georgia, is winning that game yesterday. Does it create that sense of urgency? Does it create that sense of, okay, we got things to get better at? Or is it a sense of relief of, okay, good, we're still Georgia. Okay, good, we're still the back-to-back national champs. Is it relief, or is it, whoa, we got to get better. We got to build on this. We are not a finished product by any stretch of the imagination. I tend to think with Kirby Smart being the head ball coach over there, it's probably the latter. So for Georgia, a win's a win. Test passed, beat an SEC team. No such thing as a bad win in college football, especially against a team like South Carolina, who pulled off 2 major upsets a season ago with a good quarterback in Spencer Rattler and a good head coach in Shane Beamer. So a good day in Athens, Georgia. On to the next. We appreciate you rocking with us. Make sure you're subscribed. We are live Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern. Make sure you're locked in right here so you do not miss when we go live. We'll get in the live chat. We'll have a good time. Also, hit me on socials, at JD Pickell, Instagram, Twitter. I want to hear from y'all. What'd you think of the game yesterday? How we feeling? Let me know. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.